It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. George Jones.
Hello, Ralph.
George,
how are you?
George, it's a pleasure to have you on this show.
Well, I've been trying for years to get the opportunity to be on your show, Ralph.
Have you really?
But you stay booked up quite.
George, tell me about your new record, She's My Rock.
She's My Rock. We just about run out of... it's hard to find a good song anymore. It's so many people in the business. You got so much competition. And if you're not right here in Music City, USA here, where you can sort of more or less bug the songwriters a little bit and try to get the songs first, then somebody else is going to get them. And on the road and living out of town like we do, it's hard to get a good song. And Billy Sherrill and a couple other people here work for me and in that regards of trying to help me find and keep good material, but it's really hard to find. I've noticed in the last year or so it's been the hardest I've ever seen to come up with even good album material. And but She's My Rock, we're going back to songs that have been done and maybe not overdone, but a few years back, and because we can't find anything new that's good enough, for a single nowadays.
I used to hear you introduced on the radio when I first got to playing records. I would hear other disc jockeys call you the Vidor Texas Flash.
Well, that's a little suburb of Beaumont, Texas. I say little. It's really grown out there. It's out in the country, across the river from the city of Beaumont.
Were you raised in Vidor?
No, I was raised. Actually, I was raised about 40 miles north of Beaumont in another county, the next county there called Hardin County. I was born in a little town called Saratoga, Texas, and I lived around in that area, Kuntz and Saratoga, till I was about 12, I guess, and then we moved into Beaumont when my dad went to work at the shipyard.
George, I want to ask you about another song. One of your giant hits, He Stopped Loving Her Today.
That's a good one. Now, that's the kind we wish we could find every day.
This was the record of the year, 1981? Single record of the year?
Yeah, and it won again the next year.
And, 81, 82, I guess, at the CMA Awards, it was
right.
The Song of the Year?
2 years in a row. I think I heard that... only two country songs have done that.
Right, Easy Lovin' was the other one.
Right.
By Freddie Hart. George, when you first ran across this song, did you immediately like it?
Did I immediately like it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I fell in love with it. I just went... I go nuts when I hear something that tears me up. And you almost just feel like it's got to be a good song if you go in the studio and it comes off right. However, the song wasn't finished. It was finished as far as the writers were concerned, but I kept this recitation part. Wasn't in the lyrics when I first got them.
It wasn't?
No, she didn't come back at all. I said, this woman's got to come back. It ended, before you get to the recitation. And I said, no, this woman's got to come back one way or the other, either to his funeral or she's got to come back. So Billy finally agreed with me, and he called Bobby Braddock and Curly over, and so next time I was back in town, they had it, and it was down pat. But it was I was going to sing it, and actually when we got in the studio, it's where we decided to do a recitation out of it.
Powerful song.
Sure was. It was the right time. It was different, and yet it was simple and everyday things that happen to people,
Last night, George co-hosted with me on the television show Nashville Now, and I said to the audience, if you could hear one George Jones song right now, which one would it be? And they all yelled, He Stopped Loving Her Today. And then George sang it. We are visiting with George Jones, and George is in Nashville, where he's been doing a lot of work. This was your week off, wasn't it, George?
Yeah, well, like I say, last week and this week was supposed to be my time off. And actually, it's the first time we've had any time off in quite a while, and it's going to be December before we have any more. But I was feeling pretty good, and I still am, and I thought this was important, and I'm sure it is.
How's your health, George?
Huh?
How's your health?
Oh, I feel great. We've been talking about going and getting us check in together and for a couple 3 days and get us a physical because you have your days of your day. You feel in the slump and don't have too much energy, but I think it's because of the road and not eating right, and you're on the road.
How old are you, George?
53.
When's your birthday?
September 12th.
The world is caught up now in physical exercise. Do you ever do any of
That I don't get. That is my biggest problem.
You ever, a lot of the entertainers around Nashville play golf or they like to go fishing or...
Well, the entertainers around Nashville are rich and they have plenty of time to play that golf.
Well, that's when they're off the road.
Yeah, when they're off the road.
You ever play golf in your life?
Oh, I have. I've tried it. I enjoy getting out on the course. Now, and I can tee off pretty good because I've teed a lot of people off in my past. I can do that good. But I mean, after I get down from there, they go off and leave me. I'll get stranded out there.
My guest is George Jones, who used to be a member of the United States Marine Corps.
That's right.
How long were you?
Jarhead.
A jarhead. How long were you in, George?
I was in 2 years.
Were you at Parris Island?
No, I was stationed at San Jose, California. After I got out of boot camp, I went through boot camp in San Diego, and they stationed me in San Jose at a Naval Air Station.
Did you sing while you were in service?
Yeah, I finally got around a little bit there on weekends and got to sing with old Cottonseed Clark. I'm sure you remember Cottonseed.
I do.
And
he had the local band.
I don't know if you ever knew this or not, Ralph, but Cottonseed wrote poems years ago back then, 20 years or so ago, and he wrote poems, and he sent a couple of them to Jimmy Dickens, and one of those poems was Galvanized Washing Tub. You remember the thing that Jimmy Dickens did?
Yeah, about the Saturday bath.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was another one that Jimmy Dickens
Where
did.
your front was frying and your back was freezing to death.
Right, and you have to take a bath in the same water, after three or four of your brothers and sisters got through, It was a real cute song. He did another one of Cottonseed Clark's songs, too, and I can't recall the title of it.
George, the Marines make you tough?
No, not tough at all. They told us that when you come out of boot camp, don't do it, but you can whip 10. So it was so many of them came back after that first night of liberty from San Diego. They're all skin up. There wasn't no way they could whip 10.
Did the DI make you believe it?
Yeah, they made you believe it now. They really did.
They yelled at you a lot, too, didn't they, George?
You really thought you did, but, of course, I never did like violence, so I just didn't go out and try it.
You didn't go out and get in a fight?
No.
Did they ship you overseas, George?
No. I looked up there. I wasn't shipped overseas.
Well, when you came out of the Marine Corps, did you go back into country music?
Right. Sure did.
I presume did you go in the Marine Corps right out of high school?
I didn't finish high school. I just finished the 7th grade and started singing and playing wherever I could, and then I went in the service.
They draft you?
No, I enlisted.
Well, now, since you were hung up on your career, why did you agree to leave that and go in the Marine Corps?
Well, I had all my problems. I had some problems back then. I had, young as I was, I got married.
I see.
When I was about 18, and it was a bad marriage. It didn't work, but I do have a beautiful daughter by the marriage. But at the time, I was out of work. I couldn't find work. I couldn't support my child, so I went into the service and thought maybe that might be the answer, and of course it wasn't, but it helped things at the time. So when I come out of the service, I went right back to my music.
Is that when they first cut all your hair off, George?
Right. And it felt so good I just left it off for quite a long time.
George, I'm going to ask you something I asked you last night. I thought it was an interesting answer. Who are your favorite country singers? And I say that because, particularly on this show, where we have a guest star each week, I will usually get around to saying to the star or artist, who is your favorite country singer? And I would say in 9 cases out of 10, people say, my favorite country singer is George Jones. So we're going to turn the question around now and say to George Jones, who is your favorite country singer?
Well, Ralph, she's always been my favorite female country singer, Connie Smith.
Oh.
And I would have to say Merle Haggard is my favorite male vocalist. However, I would like to say, Ralph, that we have some fine talent in this business. And when you get up to into my age, you know, I've been here a little while, and of course back when I was a kid, you know, Roy Acuff and Bill Monroe, and then I just loved them to death. And then, you know, there's stages throughout your life when you're at my age that you have your favorites. And along came, of course, you know, Hank Williams Sr., and he just dominated everything. And so actually, you know, he would be my overall favorite, even till today. I love to go back and listen to his record. But I mean, for our living legends that we have, like Merle Haggard today, he would have to be my favorite. But
which record by Merle? Any particular one?
Oh, there's so many of them that he's got that I love. I love most of his stuff. Of course, I like a lot of his singles. Don't get me wrong, but I love so much of his stuff on albums. The older albums, you know, he had some of the greatest material I ever heard. And I thought if it had been my songs, I would have tried to make them singles, every one of them.
George, you mentioned you like Connie Smith. Any particular song by Connie that stands out in your mind?
Well, yeah, I liked her older stuff that when she first came out and she was real, you know, hot on the label, and Once a Day, and I just can't think of all of them. But overall, I just love her singing. I just love her voice. I think she's what I call a true country female singer.
Have you ever
with a lot of heart and soul?
Have you ever talked to her about making a record with her?
Oh, yeah, we've talked a few times, and we're hoping that this might come about. I understand. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn or not, but I understand here a couple of days ago that she might have signed with CBS, and if a new record contract, and if she has, well, I'm really happy just to hear it. But I hope she has.
Well, that'd work it out nicely for the lawyers, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it sure would.
You'd have no legal problem recording with somebody on your same label.
Right. You know, we have so many problems. The artists are real generous about recording with you and getting together on, but it's accumulating some problems here lately. It's hard to get labels to agree with each other on things, but hopefully they'll get all that worked out.
We're visiting with George Jones. George, let's talk about a new album project. You've done an album with, speaking of girl singers, with a lot of the leading ladies of Nashville, haven't you?
Right. I've been real happy over this album, and it just came out this week, or is being shipped this week. I believe it. I understand it got in the stores yesterday.
Now, Brenda Lee was here the other day, and she brought a cut these folks have already heard of Hallelujah, I Love Her. I guess it's I Love You So.
Yeah, right.
And
she's an old Ray Charles thing. And
she was quite proud of that.
Yeah, it came off pretty good. It's Billy sneaked back in there on me, and after I left town, and sneaked a little saxophone lick in there on me.
The sax wasn't on there.
No, it wasn't on there when I took my tape on.
What do you do for fun, George?
Well, I love country music so much. I enjoy it to death.
You just like to play and sing and perform.
Right. Well, you know, like I say, we like to bowl and get out in the woods and picnic and things like that. I never was too much as a swimmer, wanting to swim and go to the beaches and all that. I love to fish. I just don't ever get a chance to do it.
I seem to recall years ago you used to collect antique cars.
Yeah, I used to do that when I lived in Florida.
You still do that?
Well, it's funny you said that. I don't do it. I haven't been doing it, but I just recently ran into a friend of mine that had a 1953 Cadillac. It's just in perfect shape, and it's just clean as a whistle. It's got about 30,000 miles on it.
A 53 Cadillac?
53, and I'm trying every way in the world to get it from him.
What does he want for it, George?
Well, I think he was offered $17,500 around the first of the year, but he didn't need the money back at the time, and he didn't take it. So he offered to me now for a little less than that, about 15. So I'm gonna try to get it.
But you're gonna try to get it for less than 15.
My tax man don't want me to, though. He won't let me.
George, I want to ask you another question that we discussed last night, and it just struck me as kind of nice. There's an album cover, I think it's CBS, and I've seen the picture in other places, of you as a little tow-headed boy walking down the streets of Beaumont, Texas, with your guitar in your hand.
One breeches leg, pants leg rolled up.
Yeah, how old were you then?
I'm thinking that I was about 12 or 13.
You would sing on the streets for just whatever you could get, wouldn't you?
Oh, people didn't really give me money. The only time that they gave me money, like I said, was that when I was in that Pitney arcade and I sat up on the shoe shine stand and just started picking and singing. I didn't know they was going to give me any money. I wasn't playing for money. I just carried my guitar everywhere I went, and they let me ride the city buses, from one end of the line to the other. When I didn't have anything to do, I had my guitar with me, and I just loved to sing and play, and that's. I hardly ever got any money, for it. Somebody might slip me $1 in my pocket or something like that every now and then.
Well, there was one day, though, you had a big day at the shoe shine stand.
Yes. I played for a couple of hours there just sitting and enjoying myself. It was on a Sunday afternoon downtown. There wasn't that many people there, and like a little penny arcade there, and they had a shoe shine stand out in front. And I just got up there, sitting up there with a little buddy of me, and he was standing down. I was sitting up there with a shoe shine boy, and just picking and singing, and people started just stopping and gathering a little bit, maybe 10 or 15, 20 people, and next thing I know, they threw nickels and pennies and quarters and $half and even some greenbacks, and I counted all that up when I got through, and I had almost $25. I was rich.
How long did you do that, George?
I just did that the one day.
No, I'm talking about how long for how long, I assume this was a summertime activity.
Yeah, right. It was.
How many summers did you do this?
Oh, I did it every time I could, I guess all the way from I was about 12, 13 years old till I was about 16. I think I was 16. I got for my first job picking in public, with Eddie and Pearl. I used to tell you about Eddie and Pearl,
Were they on the road, the radio locally there?
Right.
Beaumont?
In Beaumont, and they had a little hour show in the afternoons, and they played the little taverns and what have you on weekends, and for $17.50 a week, I got to play on the radio and play with them whatever nights they played in these taverns, and of course I got room and board.
George, do you think that the press has been unkind to you?
No, I don't think so. I think there's been a couple of times maybe there was, it's like anything else. It was according to who the guy was doing the writing. Sometimes they overdo it, go to extremes with it, About the only time I think that I've had any, I think the whole world's been good to me, and I've been very lucky to get out of it alive, and so I don't hold any grudges against the press. The only people that I hold a little grudge against is the people in Jackson, Mississippi, and not because of what I'd done and what I paid to get out of it, what it cost me to get out of it and published and everything, but it's just the writer he went to extremes and said things and wrote things in the paper that were way uncalled for.
What happened to you in Jackson, Mississippi?
Well, just the writer there for the paper wrote things about, he even brought religion in it and ugly type things like if I was in the church with a deacon, I wouldn't go to heaven. I wouldn't pass hell. I wouldn't pass go. I wouldn't collect $200 and things that were really just bad taste.
You mean he painted a sordid picture of George Jones?
Oh, it was very ruthful. Just things that was uncalled for. Didn't have anything to do with my what I did there or what.
I don't even remember what you did in Jackson, Mississippi.
Well, that's where I had my problems of when drinking and too much and this and that and the other, and I went to sleep at the wheel and wrecked my car and had some they found traces of cocaine, in the floorboard of the car, and that's back when we had all them problems a few years ago, and we definitely straightened out of all that now.
George, I know all your fans are happy to hear that all that's behind you. We are visiting with George Jones, who has had a hit record in 4 decades of country music. White Lightning was, I guess, the first giant record. It was 1959, wasn't it, George?
I believe it was, Ralph.
And he's had hit records in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and now the 80s. And I can't think of anybody else that matches that record except maybe Marty Robbins.
Yeah.
You and old Marty used to be pretty good friends, didn't you?
Yeah, we was. Not too many people could get real close to Marty, but we were always good friends when we were working together. I got to know Marty, I guess, the best when we traveled together a couple of times over to England and back, to the Wembley Festival. And I never heard him before, turn loose so much and relax and talk. And I really enjoyed the conversation with him, especially on going over to England the last time we were over there.
One time I had a battle of songs, and I don't remember. It was a Marty Robbins record against a George Jones record. Your record was The Window Up Above. And I've forgotten which one. His might have been Begging to You or something like that. I had people call in and vote. The 2 records were new. And he beat you by 1 vote. And Marty said, I always knew why. He said, I was one of the people that called up and voted for me.
Oh, bless his heart. Yeah, Marty's something else.
I want to reach back for another story. There's a side of George Jones that does not get talked about a lot, but that's, as I said last night, good-hearted Jones. But you've done a lot of things to help people that probably the world has largely forgotten. And the Johnny Rodriguez story has always fascinated me. Johnny Rodriguez, who came in here, I knew John when he first came to town because Tom T. and I were always close friends. And he was working in Tom's band, and Tom got him a recording contract, and he got a couple of hits, but he didn't really have much money because he didn't show up with any money. I think he wound up with 38 cents in his pocket when he got here. And of course, Tom put him on salary, and then the day came when he had to leave the nest, leave the Tom T. Hall band, and go out on the road. And you just can't go out on the road without some clothes, a guitar, a way to travel, and that sort of thing. And Johnny always told me he appreciated what you did for him. You want to tell these people what you did for him?
I met Johnny, and like I say, right after he had his big record there, and I just thought he was a great little old singer and a beautiful person, and I just kind of fell in love with him, and I thought he was something else. And of course, I wanted to, you want to help somebody you like that much, and if you can do anything for him, you certainly want to do that. And I had a gob of new uniforms that I never even wore, that I'd grown real fast. I just gained a lot of weight right overnight. And I thought I'd just put them to use, if he could use them. And he came to my house and tried them on, and they just fit him perfect. And so I was just glad to help, in any way I could. And he appreciated it, and we've been good friends ever since.
Well, you gave him all these suits, which were quite expensive. These were what we call nudie suits.
Right.
And Nudie, the rodeo tailor, who has since passed away, he used to make very expensive suits.
Oh, boy. He really got high in the past few years.
And you must have given him, little John, over $2,000 worth of clothes there.
Well, right at it. But we were glad to do it because I knew there wasn't any good to me anymore, I knew I wasn't going to...
George, I somehow feel like if you hadn't had those suits hanging in the closet, you'd have probably bought him something.
Well, yes, I would have. I just liked him that much. He's just a fine boy.
I'm talking with George Jones. What was the name of that album we mentioned? Lady's Choice?
Lady's Choice.
Who is your choice lady?
Well, I can't hardly say that now, Ralph.
I'm talking about the lady sitting over here on the couch.
Oh, she's my rock. Yeah, you know, She's My Rock is the only single.
I know you don't want to pick one girl singer above the others, except for
Right.
Connie Smith. I'm talking about Nancy.
Well, Nancy, I call her my rock. She's my rock.
She's really changed your life for you, hasn't she?
She sure has. She sure has. I give her all the credit. She stuck with me through the bad times and helped me to get it all right.
When did you and Nancy meet?
Oh, when did we meet? Now, that was something else. We've been married 2 years here pretty quick in March.
When's your wedding anniversary, George?
March 4th.
Okay.
I can't forget that. She won't let me. And we knew each other a year or so before, and that's when I was really having all my bad days and bad times and getting in trouble there at the last and a few places, and she just stayed right in there with me, and we got it together.
Nancy, come over here, will you, please?
Come over here, young lady.
This is Mrs. George Jones. This is Nancy. He didn't tell me where the two of you met.
You're still
remember?
digging for that, aren't you, Ralph? Let's see, how did we meet? We met through an ex-manager that, well, we don't want to talk about him too much either. And he was dating a girlfriend of mine and just wanted me to come out one weekend and meet George Jones and go to a show and just get away. And I guess I was having some rough times, too, going through a divorce.
New York, of all places.
Of all places, New York. And I went and met a very nice, sweet man.
Did you fall in love with him?
First day.
Huh?
First day.
Love at first sight.
I'd have to say that. I saw a man that was good and had been done wrong, and I think was looking for exactly what I think I wanted to give him. He was looking for a good woman and somebody to help him straighten up, and I hung in there.
What have you done for George to help him?
That I can't say. I think George has done it himself. He's the only thing I can say is that just love him and hang in there. And as far as helping George, I think George has helped himself. He gives me the credit, and I appreciate it, but I think he's done it himself.
You know, it must be awesome. You weren't in the business, right, as we call it, the business.
No.
It must be awesome to suddenly be swept up in the business, and particularly when you're married to a superstar that everybody loves or everybody has an opinion about. I would say most people love George. But certainly everybody has an opinion about George Jones. And suddenly you're swept up in all of this adulation, the commotion, if you will, that sort of thing. And everywhere you go, people are clamoring to see George, get his autograph, talk to George, that sort of thing. Was that hard for you to adjust to?
No, I don't think so. I think I knew what I was getting into to begin with. And with a lot of help of George, he's taught me everything I know about it. He's pretty smart on it.
I mean, he's taught you everything you know about our business.
Everything.
You, before you met George, were you a George Jones fan?
Correct.
Which record was your favorite?
Well, it's like everyone else. Well, I liked it. No, I think my favorite would be Window Up Above.
Oh, boy, that goes back some
Right.
time. Yeah, that was a big song back in the 60s, I guess, wasn't it?
I think in 59, 60.
Yeah, that was a super record. Our guest star of the week is George Jones, and the lady with him is Mrs. Jones, Nancy. And, Nancy, I have another question or two for you. Where did the two of you get married?
In Woodville, Texas, at his sister's house.
So you had a house wedding.
We had a house wedding. 4 people. And that includes me and George. And the preacher.
So it was George, you, the preacher, and who?
5, Captain.
Yeah, counting his sister and brother-in-law. That was it. That's all we wanted. We had a lot of work to do. We was clearing for Jones Country.
Is George neat?
Is George neat?
Yeah, did he pick up his socks?
Oh, George is very neat. Very neat, yeah. He's a little spoiled now, but he's neat. He's a little spoiled, but he's neat. But I think I've made him that way.
I told her she caused it, and I didn't want to hear no.
I think he deserves to be spoiled. He works hard.
You go on the road with him?
Yes.
You like the life on the road?
When I can find something to eat, I do.
You mean that's a problem?
It's a problem.
Well, you just stop and eat when you get hungry, you know, and you can't, it's not like being at home or here in town, you know, when you know the right places to go. You just have to pull into a place and then take your chances. You know.
Nancy, are you involved in the business of George Jones?
Yeah, me and George handle the whole thing now. It's George's. I think George could be George's manager. He knows the business enough, and he's taught me enough that we handle our own everything except booking.
My biggest problems, Ralph, is always.
Why don't you pull that microphone over a little closer to you, George?
My biggest problems in the past, and maybe I've just been unfortunate, but maybe other folks ain't had been like or not like me, but I've had all my biggest problems in my past because of managers, and I'm definitely away from them right now.
I wish the two of you well. You look like a happy couple.
Oh, we are that.
If I ever have another manager, it'll be Ralph Emery. I don't want nobody else.
George, you know I ain't got time to manage you. Are you kidding?
I don't see how you have time for anything.
You know, your attorney is one of my best friends. We grew up together.
Tom Binkley.
Old Tom Binkley. I know Tom pretty well, and I know that you can certainly trust him. George, I first heard about you, and I'd hear disc jockeys. I didn't know you. I'd hear other disc jockeys say the Vidor Flesh, stuff like that.
I got that from Tex Ritter. He called me the Vidor Flesh.
And apparently a lot of disc jockeys picked up on that.
Right.
And we kept hearing about this kid down there on the East Texas coast. And I think you were on Starday Records then.
Right.
You kept getting a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. You and Johnny Cash broke out about the same time, didn't you?
About the same time, Ralph, if I'm not badly mistaken, Johnny Cash, myself, and Jimmy C. Newman. We, all three of us were on the Louisiana Hayride about the same time. And in fact, we all three came to Nashville about the same time.
Were you on the Hayride same time Elvis was there?
Right.
Do you remember much about Elvis in those days?
Quite a bit. He turned the whole situation around there. Every Saturday night, Shreveport, at Louisiana Hayride, you know, it was big crowds every Saturday night, like Grand Ole Opry, and Elvis made it even bigger. But for some reason, seems like the trend was changing. You know, especially with a different type that they got from Elvis at the time, and when Elvis left the Hayride, well, this hurt the business there pretty bad.
But Elvis brought on the rockabilly situation.
Right.
Did you try to jump in and sing rockabilly?
Well, there wasn't so much we could do, Ralph. You got to join them, you know. And
is that when Thumper Jones was born?
Right. But he died pretty fast.
How many records did you make as Thumper Jones?
One only.
As an experiment?
One side was called Rocket. And the other side was called Dadgummit, How Come It?
Did Pappy Daly talk you into that, or did you do that on your own?
No, that was my own idea. That was one of my worst
Why didn't you stick with it?
Ideas, you know.
Why didn't you stick with it, George?
Well, I'll tell you, the way they did that, you know, it hurt my throat.
Oh, okay.
I just couldn't do it.
George, what's that old song where you dropped your voice into a lower key and you'd say, I get suspicious and I'm going to tell you so?
You gotta be my baby.
Yeah, I thought that's the one. George, has country music changed a lot over the years?
Oh, they've changed, I think, tremendously, Ralph.
Has the business changed a lot?
Yes. I think everything in general has changed. Mostly the business. More people got involved into the actual artist, you know, like the publishers and you know, managers, people like that. You know, a lot of people from out of town, like New York, California. So most of them people, I think, that when they came here, were mostly the people in publishing, because the country music started being so big, and they saw, you know, a lot of future in it, money-wise, and a lot of them moved in here, and I think they've I can't think of the word to use for it, but they've influenced a lot of people in the business, the labels, and your television shows like the CMA Awards and things like that.
Is it as much fun as it used to be?
Oh, I enjoy it when I do it. I kind of got my feelings towards all these these big to-do shows and everything, and how the awards go and things like that. Of course, everybody does. And,
you want to express your feelings, George?
Well, I think I would like to say this real brief, and then I'll bow out because I don't want to offend no one. But I think they're taking too much of the good country music out of what is supposed to be country music, and that's what Nashville's all about. The CMA Awards stands for Country Music Association. We don't have much in that CMA that I feel of the letters CM. Well, all we got left is the A.
Are you saying country music is too pop?
I think they're carrying it too far to the other field, which is good. There's good records out, don't get me wrong, and there's some great talent. But I just love, I speak for myself, I guess, because I just love country music that much, and I hate to see it just be destroyed altogether. I mean, to where it's not, you don't have none of the country sounds anymore, and the good country tear-jerking type things that the people, the hard-working man loves to hear.
George, will you ever be accused of going pop?
I'm afraid not.
Huh?
I'm afraid not. I could tell you a little joke about that later, about me and Webb Pierce going pop.
with the firecrackers?
Yeah, about the firecrackers. No, most of the songs today, a lot of recordings today, if you'll notice, Ralph, or the middle of the road type things, and if you took a lot of the lyrics and put them on a piece of paper and read them, well, there's nothing there. There's no good story. There's nothing like it used to be in the good country music songs. All they are is the arrangements. They're just putting arrangements with them, and all this stuff that sounds like the old pop records, which to me is nothing more nowadays than the pop arrangements. And
so there's a large element here of country music today you don't particularly like.
I'm saying they got their good recordings, what they make of them, and the artist and there's a talent. They do a good job, but
you really hate to hurt anybody's feelings, don't you?
Well, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm just trying to express mine. I hate to see it all go to a strictly pop type of thing, and we're supposed to be country music.
George, I've got to go back. I'll tell these folks that you've always felt this way, because you used to get on me when I played records all night 20 years ago.
Well, I used to be worse. I used to really get on you bad.
You didn't particularly care for me to play those records with strings on them, like Jim Reeves records and Patsy Cline records.
Huh? I've been a lot since then. I have went to some of the pretty ballads that they put them in the background way back there, and they do make a record.
I think you used to think I was too pop as a disc jockey.
But I'm not talking too much about that type of thing. I'm talking about these jungled up, upbeat type of things.
I know you love John Anderson. What'd you think about Swinging?
Well, I loved it now, but it had a story, and it brought back the old. I could just see these kids out in the country rural area, and sitting on the front porch of this old house, and the mama frying chicken and all that, and it had a story to it, I thought it was one of the cutest things that's been out in years.
Did you ever make a Christmas record?
I made just to put out a little single one time on the Starday label back when I recorded in the house, and it was terrible sound. Want a New Baby for Christmas and a Lonely Christmas Call, which I've been aiming to do this Lonely Christmas Call all over again, and I seem to get caught. When I think about it, I always it's right just before Christmas. It's too late for me to go in and record it, but I'm definitely going one of these days going to try to get it out for a single for Christmas.
George, you like Christmas?
I love Christmas.
How do you spend Christmas?
I spend Christmas at home with the family and the kids and what have you, and grandchildren.
Yeah, that's a phase of George Jones's life you may not know about. How many grandchildren do you have, George?
I got 5 right now and 1 on the way.
How many children do you have?
I got 2 boys and 2 girls. I got my oldest daughter, the oldest one in the family, Susan. She lives here in Nashville, And I have 2 grandchildren from her, and a boy and a girl. And, of course, Georgette, she's 14. And then my 2 boys are married, and my oldest boy has 2 and 1 on the way. And then my youngest boy just recently had their baby about 2 months ago.
How old are your boys?
Brian's 24 and Jeffrey's 29. He just turned 29 the 9th.
What do they do?
They both work for me on the road. They don't actually work for me anymore. I turned it all over to them. They handle the concessions, T-shirts, caps, things like that. They also have their own printing facilities. They have their own shop that they just recently set up, and that's the reason I'm proud of them, because they really do a good job on the material, the concessions, and then people get a good piece of material when they buy it.
So do all of you gather at Christmas time? Do all of you gather together?
Yes, sir. We sure do. We have a blast.
What do your grandkids call you, George?
Paw.
That's cute.
Yeah, well, I tell you, for a while there, it just made me feel real old and all that, and still have a touch of that feeling, but now that I've kind of got used to it, and I wouldn't trade it for nothing, That's the way it is when you become grandpa or grandma.
When do you open your packages? Christmas Eve or Christmas morning?
I can't wait, so I open them about 2 or 3 days before.
What do you want for Christmas? Do you really?
I sneak in and get my main ones,
What do you want for Christmas, George?
Where am I going?
No, what do you want?
What do I want? I just want this year, I think the good Lord's been so good to us. I just want my health and my family with me at Christmas time, and I'll be very happy, and all the good cooking that Nancy does, and I'll just be real happy there in my house shoes and jammers.
Do what?
I'll be real happy and content with my house shoes and jammers.
Oh, your jammies. Oh, okay. We touched on it earlier. I was kidding you about some of your names, but you were a disc jockey for a while in a little station. We're in Beaumont, Texas?
Beaumont, Texas.
How long were you on that station?
I guess I was on for a year or 2, something like that.
And that Vinegar Face, P. Williker, that's how you came on, wasn't it?
Right. I had a show, and back in those days, you got a lot of cards and letters, and I told the friends and neighbors to write me, and I run a little contest one time. A lot of people would write me and want to know how old I was, and so I was going to give them a record if they could, whoever came the closest to guessing my age. And back at the time, I think I was 18, 19 years old, and I never got one letter or card that said I was under 30. Most of them was 40, 45 years old, 50. And I guess it's just the way my voice sounded over the air that I just sounded a lot older. And I got to telling the people to write in to old George P. Williker, Pickle Bush Jones. And they really thought I was older by the way I talked, I guess.
And when you said old, they started guessing old.
Right.
You could have turned that into an act. You could have called yourself Grandpa Jones.
Yeah, sure.
That might have been a pretty successful act. What, George, how long have you known Grandpa?
I've known Grandpa, I guess, ever since I've seen him perform, in my earlier days. But when I first came to the Opry is when I first met him back in around 1955 or 56.
What did he say to you about your mail?
Oh, we used to get our mail at the WSM, and he said, I wish you'd tell them people to quit putting your mail in my box.
George, let's talk about the books. There are 2 books out about your life that you disagree with. One called Ragged But Right, and I don't know the name of the new book. But I understand that you were not interviewed. Did they even ask you?
No, they didn't. What gets me about it, Ralph, is they're not that they're just dumb books. They start off talking about the big thicket of East Texas, and what they did was got their source of information from just a small number of people, like 3 or 4 people. A couple of them were kinfolks of mine, which no offense to them or anybody else, as far as that goes, but it's just hearsay stuff. And none of it is I didn't read but just a little bit of the first book, and I didn't read the rest of it. It was so dumb, and nothing at all is right about in any of the books. And I just thought it was, if you're going to write a book about somebody, you don't write a book on hearsay and what some guy down the street tells you about something, you know. I don't mind the truth being printed about me. And in fact, I told the lady that wrote the Ragged but Right book, I said, all I don't even want a nickel out of the book. I don't want nothing out of the book. If you're going to write a book on me, all I want is the truth. I want the story to be about me, and I want it to be the truth. And whatever you dig up, even if it's bad, I want it printed, and I want the truth told. And I haven't, part I read and what I understand, what my wife Nancy read the whole thing, and it's just disgusting. There's nothing in it at all but hearsay and word of mouth, and nothing that even pertains to the things that people would want to hear about an artist anyhow.
You think some people who voiced their opinions about you were trying to hurt you?
Well, really, it doesn't bother me, because even the truth don't bother me if it's bad, as long as it's true. People that have a chance, they went to get this material, they have a chance. If they dislike you a little bit, all they got to do is say to themselves, well, now here's a good chance I really get even. So all it is a bunch of trash. And I think we got too smart of education, and we're too up in society today in a great country to where we don't have to go down and spend our hard-earned dollar and buy nothing but trash. And especially if you ain't gonna get no good out of it at all.
So you don't approve of either one of the books, do you?
I certainly don't.
Okay, I wanted. Seeing all of this, I haven't heard George Jones's side of all this.
Well, first of all, they didn't get permission from me, as I understand it nowadays. They don't have to have permission.
You're a public figure, George.
Yeah, right. And so I always said sticks and stones break my bones, but it ain't nothing going to kill me. And I've been through a lot of things in this business and life that I caused and brought a lot on myself, and I'm not blaming nobody for that. In fact, I couldn't, because so many of them stood by me. But all I ever wanted out of life is try to be as honest as I could, and if I did bad, I try to do right.
George, I want to talk about some of your old duets for a moment. You used to make records with Gene Pitney, didn't you?
I sure did.
Was this, I don't know whether many people remember this, but Gene Pitney was a big rock act. I always thought that was a peculiar combination, the big rock act with the big country act.
Ralph, this is when I first moved from United Artists Records to Musicorps. And Gene Pitney was on Musicorps, and at the time he was about the hottest thing going in that field overseas. And they thought it really might be something, he loves country music, always has, and of course he never sung country, and he always wanted to do a country album. So they said, well, if you want to do a country album, why don't you do one with George Jones, since he's just signed with the label. So that's what we done, and we did 2 albums together, and the first album was a real good seller for us.
I know. Now this next song we're going to play by you did it as a duet with him, Love Bug?
Right.
And well, you did 2 albums. Was this back when he was so hot and singing? He used to sing "The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance" and all those songs.
Right.
I heard one time he owned a chemical company. Is that right?
I heard that too, but I don't believe it was true.
Okay. Just you got to check these things out. George, what do you want to say about the Love Bug?
Well, the Love Bug was a record that I came out with. I believe it was the very next record after Race's On. I was trying to get another up-tempo thing going, and it wasn't quite as big as Race's On. Wayne Kemp wrote the song, a fine singer in his own right, and so we did it, and I've recorded about 3 different times, and it still didn't really come off the way I wanted it to, but the last time we thought it was good enough, so we put it out.
You know what's strange about this? I just noticed something. This record is exactly the same time as the race is on.
Is it really?
2 minutes and 3 seconds.
Well, I never noticed that before.
So if you were trying to get something just like it, you'd doggone.
Well, maybe that's the reason it didn't sell as good. It was the same length of time there. Well, I never noticed that.
George, there's been a lot of concern about your health, about your lifestyle. And for that reason, I'm going to ask you, have you licked your bad habits?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, definitely.
Feel better?
I feel great.
Because you look
Stomach
good.
don't hurt no more in the mornings, and the head don't ache, and I'm thrilled to death that I did get it together.
George, I want to bring up a subject that we've talked about before. I know Hank Williams has always been one of your idols, and I'd like to discuss Hank Williams again. How well did you know Hank Williams?
Ralph, I was in Beaumont, Texas, back during his heyday, when he was really starting off big. I guess I was 17 years old, something like that, and I had a radio. Well, it wasn't my show. It was another couple's radio show in the afternoon around 4 o'clock, and Hank Williams was appearing in town that night at what we call the Blue Jean Club out on the Port Arthur Highway. And Neville Powell was a very good friend of, he was a disc jockey, and he was a very good friend of Hank Williams back at that time on KRIC in Beaumont. And we had this afternoon show, so he had Hank to come by that afternoon before his dance that night and do a song on our show. And the song he did was Wedding Bells. It had just been released. And I played electric guitar when I first started off with this man and wife team. And I had it all figured out. I knew he was going to come by. And I'd already learned Wedding Bells, and I sung it at some places already. And I knew it well, and I had it all, my part figured out on the guitar. He gets up to the microphone with his guitar. He made me mad. He didn't let me kick it off. I done had that all figured out. I wanted to kick it off. So he started just singing it cold, you know. So, and when he started singing, I loved his singing so much, and I was so dumbfounded that I never hit one note on that guitar. From the time he started to the time he finished, my fingers just froze to the neck of the guitar. And that's in a small summary of just how much he meant to me.
Do you recall anything he said to you?
Well, we had a little talk. You know, I was wanting to get started in the business, and the couple that was with me was talking with him too, and told him that I was a big fan of Roy Acuff's and him. And he got to telling me that he tried to sing like Roy Acuff when he first started, and that he found out that they already had one Roy Acuff. What they needed now was, as far as he was concerned, was Hank Williams. So he started singing like Hank Williams and started doing all right for himself. I said, well, maybe I better quit trying to sing like you and Roy Acuff and try to sound like my own self. So he gave me a pretty good tip, and this is what I did.
But you got all shook up when he came.
But I really froze.
George, you've got, unless I'm wrong, you've got 2 albums out in tribute to Hank Williams.
Right. Back when I was on the Mercury label, I did my first album of Hank Williams songs, George Jones Salutes Hank Williams. And this was one of the biggest thrills of my career of recording, because it's something I'd wanted to do even sooner than I did it. But they finally let me do it, and it's so real good for me.
Can you still buy these albums? You did another one, too, on another label.
Right, and later on, after I moved from Mercury to United Artists, I did another album of Hank Williams songs. And, Ralph, I'm not sure that, I don't believe they're still on the market.
I noticed, too, cut 1, side 1 on one of these albums is Wedding Bells.
Right. I had to get that in.
Did you freeze up again?
Almost.
We've been visiting here with George Jones and Miss Nancy Jones. Is it George Glenn?
George Glenn.
George Glenn Jones. And, George, I appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk to us.
Thank you, Ralph. I've certainly enjoyed it. I wish we had more time, but maybe next time we can just take our time and just gab a whole lot.
You are very much in demand. You're a hot item.
Oh, me.
And the fans love you. They really do.
I certainly love them, and they've sure stuck by me and for about 30 years now in the business, and I just hope they'll stick by a few more years. We'll have made.
George, I think I'll tell you this. I haven't told anybody this. On the Hall of Fame ballot, they have a blank there where you can write in anybody you want to. And I wrote in the name George Jones because I think if anybody deserves to be in the Country Music Hall of Fame, you do.
Well, bless your heart, right?
Floyd Tillman got it this year, and he deserved it.
He sure did.
I know he's a favorite of yours.
He sure is. He's fine people.
But I think they ought to put you in there pretty soon.
Well, I hope they do, and if they don't, Ralph, I thank you for voting for me.
And I wish you and Nancy and your family well wherever you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much.